just now. Now we are looking for some more presentations, short presentations, and the first one. My name is Father Ulrich Engel. I'm a Dominican theologian from Berlin, from Institut Marie-Dominique Chenu. We are collaborating with the faculty and the Angelicum in this session today. First, I want to ask Don Vincenzo Serpe. He is a doctoral student at the Faculty of Philosophy and at Angelicum. Please present your short testimonial, please.
Grazie Padre Ulrich, grazie agli organizzatori, ecco, di questa iniziativa. Cercherò di rimanere strettamente nei tempi, condivido il PowerPoint, non so se si riesce a vedere, spero di sì. Sì, vedo che ci sono dei problemi. Credo si veda in questo momento.
Yeah. Fine.
Grazie, chiedo scusa per l'interruzione. Benissimo. Molto brevemente, ecco, l'analisi che volevo proporre in questo contesto parte da alcuni concetti chiave, che sono i concetti di alterità, giustizia e il concetto di reconnaissance, così come viene presentato da Paul Ricoeur. Il contesto nel quale cerco di muovere questa analisi parte da quanto suggerito da Papa Francesco in diverse occasioni, innanzitutto da quello che possiamo, a mio parere, ecco, si può dire il punto focale per andare incontro all'altro nella sua alterità, che è il tema della conoscenza. Papa Francesco, nel messaggio per la 106esima giornata mondiale del migrante e del rifugiato, richiama proprio questa considerazione circa la conoscenza delle altre persone in quanto persone e non come numeri, come tanto spesso sentiamo appunto dalle analisi e dai giornali, delle notizie che passano. Insieme a questo mi piaceva sottolineare il concetto che sempre Papa Francesco nella Fratelli Tutti richiama, che è quello di una capacità di sognare e di sognare insieme. Attraverso un'analisi fatta su questo tema, il sognare insieme pone nella relazione la complessità della costituzione antropologica, che appunto non è un sognare da soli per poter in qualche modo dare un cambio di direzione nella attuale società. La provocazione che ancora una volta viene dalla Fratelli Tutti di Papa Francesco è la provocazione che l'altro, che lo straniero interpella a chiunque venga in contatto con lui. E mi piace sottolineare questa espressione entrando in questa dinamica appunto di capacità di identificarsi con l'altro. Cercherò di presentarlo brevemente poi, in quanto Paul Ricoeur in modo particolare offre, si sperimenta, ecco, che gli altri sono la sua stessa carne, e questa dimensione diventa particolarmente importante. Il focus che vorrei dare in questa breve presentazione è quella di un patto culturale che permetta, come sottofondo, permetta di dare merito, permetta di dare un background, ecco, culturale a quanto un'etica può proporre al nostro contesto attuale. In modo particolare volevo sottolineare, ecco, partendo da un concetto di giustizia, il concetto di giustizia in San Tommaso, nella Summa della virtù di giustizia, secondo alcune brevissime caratteristiche. Nella definizione di giustizia che Tommaso riporta, la giustizia è la costante e perpetua volontà che dà a ciascuno il suo diritto. Emergono alcune caratteristiche, a mio parere, imprescindibili, ed è l'alterità dell'altro nel concetto di giustizia, che prevede, e negli articoli di questa questione sono richiamati spesso, l'uguaglianza, e altrettanto l'uguaglianza richiama a sua volta la diversità dell'altro. Il concetto di giustizia, in modo particolare la virtù di giustizia nei confronti delle altre virtù, si comporta in maniera particolare come appunto una virtù particolarmente relazionale. Si vede, emerge in questo dato proprio dalla materia della virtù di giustizia, che sono quelle cose che ci rapportano agli altri. Il soggetto diventa fondamentale, il soggetto è la volontà dell'essere umano, diventa fondamentale perché l'appetito razionale permette in questo senso di dare il quadro di una virtù che viene definita da Tommaso superiore rispetto alle altre virtù, in quanto radicata appunto nell'appetito razionale, che è appunto la volontà. Il radicamento, ecco, forte della giustizia nella natura razionale dell'essere umano, a questo punto, ecco, è capace di esprimerne innanzitutto la razionalità. Questa velocissima analisi di Tommaso mi permette di sottolineare come in Tommaso siano presenti due versanti proprio nella virtù di giustizia. Il versante, potremmo dire, individuale, che Tommaso in modo particolare espone attraverso la giustizia particolare dalla parte del soggetto e dalla parte dell'oggetto, ma anche una virtù che è generale e quindi diventa giustizia legale. Riesce a tenere insieme in questo modo, attraverso questo concetto, ciò che è individuale insieme a ciò che è universale. In questo senso è utile, mi sembrava utile sottolineare come la stessa distinzione che Tommaso opera in una questione un po' più avanti, nella questione 61, la distinzione nella giustizia commutativa e distributiva, possano altrettanto essere quel paradigma che tenga insieme individualità, particolarità, universalità, comunità. Vado velocissimamente facendo un salto di oltre 700 anni per presentare e mettere in relazione alla fine un paradigma che potrebbe essere preso come un paradigma etico, così come lo presenta l'autore stesso. Il paradigma della traduzione, così come viene presentato da Richer, ha questa caratteristica, un'immagine molto bella, che è dimorare. La traduzione implica dimorare presso l'altro, per condurlo presso di sé a titolo di ospite invitato. E l'ethos che nasce da questo paradigma, o meglio che può nascere da questo paradigma in base a quanto propone Richer, ha queste caratteristiche: permette uno scambio di memoria, far sì che l'altro diventi parte della mia memoria, una riformulazione narrativa che non è una revisione della storia, ma è una riformulazione in chiave ermeneutica. Ovviamente viene sotteso in questo senso tutto il pensiero di Richer, qui non c'è il tempo di presentarlo chiaramente, ma che permette di riformulare il proprio vissuto, la propria storia, la propria cultura in un'ottica ermeneutica dell'incontro con l'altro, e sfocia, secondo l'autore, può sfociare, secondo l'autore, in un ethos del perdono che permetta un reale incontro con l'altro, perché ci si incontra in quel comune, ecco, luogo, in quel comune spazio che può essere appunto così identificato dall'ospitalità linguistica, così come emerge anche nella traduzione materiale. Il modello poi, ecco, della traduzione ha come quasi immediata riflessione successiva nel passaggio nel testo postumo di Richer della reconnaissance, che è quel riconoscimento che nella lingua francese vuol dire altrettanto gratitudine. c'è un passaggio fondamentale per Ricoeur da un'identità che egli chiama idem, un'identità quasi potremmo dire monolitica, in sé compiuta, a un'identità ipse che invece acquisisce la propria identità attraverso e non, potremmo dire, nonostante l'incontro con l'altro. Ecco allora come questa riconoscenza, questo riconoscimento può diventare una categoria cardine, così come lo presenta lo stesso Ricoeur, proprio per il fatto che c'è un mutuo contraccambio tra gli individui posti in relazione e riconoscere nell'alterità dell'altro, avere con l'alterità dell'altro la gratitudine proprio per l'alterità dell'altro. Mi sembrava, ecco, che in questo contesto l'incontro che viene a istituirsi tra lavoratori, in modo particolare migranti da zone differenti, in modo particolare il focus sull'Europa, così come abbiamo visto nel corso di questa mattinata, permette di avere questa precisazione. L'altro è portatore o portatrice di un dono che per me diventa fonte di gratitudine. L'ultimissimo concetto mi sembrava bello, quello di porre un po' in parallelo la gratuità, così come emerge in Ricoeur, con la gratitudine, così come viene presentata da Tommaso, sempre nella stessa parte, nell'esplicazione della virtù della giustizia, quella gratitudine che diventa contraccambio gratuito, nel caso appunto presentato da Tommaso, non per obbligo, ma per spontaneità, è un surplus, qualcosa che non deve semplicemente ridare quanto è dovuto in base a un concetto di giustizia semplicemente commutativa, ma è la gratitudine che tende a restituire qualcosa di più. Ecco, questa espressione utilizzata da Tommaso mi sembra possa essere messa in parallelo con quanto propone Ricoeur, sempre utilizzando, mi permetto di utilizzare un paradigma medievale, ma che diventa un paradigma forte nel contesto attuale, il concetto di giustizia legale che ha di mira il conseguimento del bene comune, così come emerge in Tommaso, può divenire una base forte, da lasciare ovviamente a coloro che sono esperti nei campi, può diventare una base forte per poter applicare questo concetto di giustizia che diventa gratitudine per l'altro e che può divenire prassi concreta nell'ambito anche legale, quindi ricevere anche un valore normativo nelle relazioni internazionali. Spero di essere stato nei tempi, ringrazio per l'attenzione.
Thank you very much, Don Vincenzo. First, we are going further with the next presentation. We are switching from the Faculty of Philosophy, Angelicum, to the Faculty of Theology. And please, Bernadette McConaughey, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm just trying to, yes, I'm just bringing up my PowerPoint. I don't think you can see me, but you can see my PowerPoint. So thank you for the opportunity. And yes, it's a nice continuation of the last talk, because I will be talking about legal justice. My talk will consist of a brief overview of the legal system that governs or impacts on migrant workers' rights. And by responsibilities, I'm referring to legal obligations to uphold human rights of migrant workers. The purpose is to identify some gaps in legal protection and therefore to identify areas where legal protection could be improved. So there are several overlapping and interacting human rights systems that impact on the rights of migrant workers in Europe. These systems are at an international and a European level. The starting point of human rights is the inherent dignity of the human being, regardless of immigration status. And human rights are universal, inalienable, indivisible, and interdependent. So I'm now going to give an overview of the legal framework governing relevant human rights. And the starting point is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the UDHR, Article 1 of which states that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So human rights are for all human beings, regardless of any other classification. Therefore, migrants, regardless of their legal status, are entitled to the full protection of their human rights. Now, the International Bill of Human Rights is made up of these three documents, and I refer to some of the relevant rights contained in them. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which I've just mentioned, that states that slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. It also states that everyone has the right to work. However, it is a non-legally binding document. The other two treaties develop the rights set out in the UDHR into legally binding instruments. So the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights deals with civil and political rights. Article 2 extends protection to all individuals within the territory of the state party without discrimination. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights sets out many rights relevant to migrants, as the rights are indicated to belong to everyone. The right to work is included in Article 4, and the right to join a trade union is recognized in Article 8. So international human rights law lays down obligations which states are bound to respect. And unlike other bodies of law, international human rights law applies to all people at all times within the state's jurisdiction or effective control. This means that all migrants, regardless of their status, are entitled to the same international human rights as everyone else. States have an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights of all rights holders, including migrants. To respect human rights means not to commit human rights violations. To protect human rights means to take measures to prevent human rights violations being committed by others. And to fulfill human rights means to take positive steps to secure these rights. The International Labour Organization, the ILO, is a UN agency which promotes standards and fundamental rights and principles at work, and has drafted a number of conventions relevant to migrant workers. The 1998 Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work specifically includes migrant workers in the preamble. Convention 118 is of relevance to migrant workers and their families in respect of social security rights. Convention 97 only applies to legally admitted migrant workers, and under Article 4, member states shall take appropriate measures to cover the departure, journey, and reception of migrant workers. Convention 143 states that member states undertake to respect the basic human rights of all migrant workers. The focus of this convention is the protection of migrants smuggled illegally into a state, as well as to promote equality of treatment of workers. And now we just move on to the Council of Europe, which consists of 47 countries, including the 27 EU member states. So the Charter of Fundamental Rights is the European Union's Bill of Human Rights. And this charter sets out all the fundamental rights and freedoms of EU citizens and individuals resident in the EU. It covers fundamental rights relating to work. Redress for alleged breaches can be taken to the European Court of Justice. The European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, deals with civil and political rights. These rights and freedoms belong to everyone within a member state's jurisdiction. And the European Court of Human Rights can hear applications for alleged violations. Now, the European Social Charter deals with the social and economic rights. Protection, however, is confined to nationals of Council of Europe member state parties, and the European Committee of Social Rights monitors compliance. In terms of current developments in migration law, the UN Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration is a non-binding document. And then the EU Asylum and Migration Pact, which is currently at discussion stage, may significantly impact migration procedures in Europe going forward. In terms of gaps in legal protection, the main gap is the lack of ratification of relevant conventions and treaties. So the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families, 1990, is a comprehensive document setting out rights relating to migrant workers. However, no country in Western Europe has so far ratified it. Another gap is that some conventions specifically exclude migrant workers or narrows the definition. The European Convention on the Legal Status of Migrant Workers narrowly defines migrant worker and excludes from protection under the convention migrant workers who are not nationals of a contracting state. In addition, the convention does not apply to seasonal workers. So in conclusion, there are gaps in the legal protection of migrant workers in that countries may not have ratified a treaty that protects them, or they may be excluded from protection under an existing treaty. Increasing legal protection of human rights increases protection of individual migrant workers in Europe. And finally, when discussing law and human rights, we have to constantly remember we're dealing with human beings and it's human rights for human beings. Thank you.
Bernadette, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm very impressed. I'm impressed by the presentation of Don Vincenzo. Now we will switch from Rome, from Angelicum to Romania, and the presentation is by Iuliu Marius Moraiu. Please, you are.
Thank you very much, Professor. I hope you hear me. Please tell me if the sound is okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you very much. Now I want to move you from this field of very interesting analysis of concepts and laws and of all these stuffs to something that could be classified as kind of case study, because it's somehow linked with what I work, with what I did. And I thought it's interesting to see also the historical approach of a certain problem that it has actual accents of actuality, for example. Therefore, my presentation is related with the Romanian exiles from France that were there during the communist period. Here we had, as you perhaps know, an important nucleus of intellectuals, but not only of intellectuals that came in France, most of them for political reasons. For this reason, due to the fact that they were implied in the life of the society and have always tried to work against the communism and the communist abuses, the topic has been approached until now. We have the memories of some of them published, we have the works dedicated to some of them, we have books of interviews with them, but still there are aspects that can be understood and that can be analyzed in a different light, for example. And that's why I tried to approach this in order to see and to understand the fact that migration is not something that arrived after 1989, but just increased, and some certain mechanisms remain the same while others developed due to the conditions and to the social and cultural conditions that come. When one speaks about the Romanian migration from France, he or she speaks about the Romanian migration from Paris, due to the fact that Romanians from there constitute a huge nucleus in the capital of France, and the other ones who lived somewhere in the other cities or in other places, you know, they were associated with the idea of Paris, even if they were part of other cities of Nyon or something like this, of Lyon. Now when they spoke as Romanians, they were linked with the idea of the Romanians from Paris. This was the nuclei. Now, in fact, it doesn't start the Romanian immigration with the communism. It's a huge wave that starts with 23rd of August 1944, when a lot of people from the ancient nobility, a lot of people who were part of the historical parties in Romania, decided to change, to switch the country where they lived and to choose the exile. Then it will be a second wave who will start somewhere in the 60s and in the 70s, when people who were imprisoned for political reasons will find, some of them will manage to escape and to come and to find a refuge in France. There will be also a third possibility to arrive in, but not in France, in other countries, when the people were bought by other people in order to be allowed to leave the country. It was the case, perhaps you know, of Richard Wurmbrand, who was a Lutheran pastor and who was bought by a Lutheran community from Sweden for, I think, about $10,000 at the moment. So this would be somehow in short, the history of the Romanian exile from France. Well, what did actually this exile in France? Why they were there, and what was their attitude? What was their activity? For sure, about the landmarks of the activity of the Romanian exile from France, we must count the Radio Free Europe. This was the most important, for sure, the most important voice of fighting against communism, because if they arrived in France, they arrived at people who were persecuted, and at the same time, they want to help the ones from Romania who were at their turn persecuted. So Radio Free Europe constituted the tool that gave them voice when it was necessary to do this. And for this reason, Radio Free Europe is the most important aspect that can be investigated when we speak about the Romanian exile from France and about his voice in the cultural sphere. Of course, there were also others, but this was the main tool, because in a certain moment of their life, everyone from the intellectuals that formed the exile from France, the Romanian exile from France, came in touch with the Free Europe, or perhaps some of them that came primarily to the Free Europe with the Voice of America, because it was this also the name previously. Now, this Radio Free Europe had a very important voice, that was Nicolae Stănescu Stănișoara and then Noel Bernard. But
Noel Bernard e Nicola per questo erano in Germania, perché era in Germania, no? Urle, c'è stato anche un ufficio a Parigi.
Office was held by Monica Lovinescu and Virgil Runca. While Noel Bernard was a Jew people who came into the exile, but in the same time he felt Romanian and he tried to be linked with the Romanian identity, Monica Lovinescu was for sure a Romanian woman, and a very important one, because she was the daughter of one of the most important writers and literary criticists from the Romanian interwar period. So when she arrived there, she was already known, she had already relationships with all the others intellectuals from France, and she was capable to bring them together and to coagulate them in the neighborhood of this radio. And then after her marriage with Virgilia Runca, who was also a young intellectual who started with being a left-sided politician, a left-sided sympathizing, and then ended as being an anti-communist, they did a very, very interesting activity. Of course, in 1977, Ceausescu was very angry with her because of some of the interviews that she published, and of the fact that many Romanians who were persecuted for political reasons managed to send in France different letters where they were describing the discriminations that they were part of. And for this reason, in 1977, the Romanian Securitate organized a kind of attentate when she was almost killed, but this doesn't stop her. She died in 2006, I think, yes, in 2008, excuse me. She died in 2008, so she was not stopped by this, and she ended as a reporter in Radio Free Europe at the end of the communism. So she was one of the men, or one of the people who was among these invisible workers, in fact, who did important things for the Romanian space in France with Radio Free Europe. It was thanks to her why people like Paul Goma, who will be later important voices of the exile, or Virgil Gheorghiu, or even Andrei Scrima, arrived in France, and why people like, for example, the most important theologian that perhaps is not foreign for some of you who work in the field of theology, Father Dumitru Stăniloae, was in a certain moment of his life not killed by the communists in prison, because in Radio Free Europe it was always spoken about him. Of course, she was also part of certain conflicts, and she was not a very peaceful woman, but this is explained why, because she was working in this field. Now, I will invite you to take a look on the relationship between exile and religiosity, and to present you two case studies. One of them is Andrei Scrima, who you see in this picture. He was an archimandrite, and he was a Romanian monk that departed in 1956 in Benares, where he realized he defended a PhD, very interesting, with a scholarship offered by the Vice President of India. He wrote a PhD on the relationship between Buddhism and Christianism. And then in 1958, he also defended a second PhD and got in contact with Patriarch Athenagoras, who sent him as his personal delegate to the Second Vatican Council, context where he became friend with Father Yves Congar, with a lot of other people, and he was behind the curtains, if you want, when they organized the meeting between the Pope and the Patriarch, the Ecumenical Patriarch in Jerusalem. So he was one of the most important people who defined this exile. But in the same time, as I found when I worked on the documents of the Securitate, he was somehow, self-isolated by many of the members of the Romanian exile in the second half of his life in France, because he never trusted them enough, and he always suspected some of them to be somehow in contact with the Romanian structures. The second one, this one, is the most famous Romanian writer from the French exile. It's called Virgil Gheorghiu. Perhaps some of you have heard about him. He wrote about 40 books, and he was translated in 40 languages. And his main masterpiece, The 25th Hour, was screened in 1967 with Anthony Quinn as a main character. So he's also an important personality, and he was also a priest. I don't know how it happens, but among the important personalities of the Romanian exile from France, there were always priests, and these priests have often been part of different scandals. And it's important to say that he arrived here in 1948. He published this book, and then he got in conflict also with Monica Lovinescu. But in the same time, he remained an important cultural personality, and as a priest, because he was ordained in 1963, he had very, very good relationships with Protestants, with Catholics, with the ecumenical field from France, and he also increased the prestige and the role of the Romanian Orthodox Church in this area. He died in 1992, and for all the second part of his life, he was a very vehement critic, the man who criticized the communists, and also tried to help the ones who were in prison for political reasons. Because, for example, one of his professors, Nikifor Krajnik, who was a philosopher with far-right orientation, was in a certain point arrested. And it's interesting to see, for example, that he published a book where he spoke about his drama, because he was informed by some of his friends who were already in Romania about his story. And for this reason, he made him more visible in the Occident. For this reason, as a kind of conclusion, as I've told you, Radio Free Europe was an extremely useful tool in the fight against the communists. And in the same time, he proved that Romania is not just a country of people who is ruled by somebody who never cares about the people, but in the same time, you have cultural people, because Radio Free Europe was also listened by other people from other countries. And Monica Lovinescu was a radio woman like Ierunca, and a writer who published interesting books. And in the Radio Free Europe, people like Mircea Eliade, Eugen Ionescu, or Cioran also wrote there. Also, they were people who fight for their principles. For this reason, Monica Lovinescu, Paul Goma, many others were almost killed. It was a certain price on their heads, like in the Western movies. And this says a lot about their role and what they did. And in the same time, their work, as I could see by doing interviews, because I realized more than 300 hours of interviews with people living in the communist period, and more than 50 with people who were in prison for political reasons since I've started to work on the communism in Romania. Everybody listened to Free Europe, and it was very, very important for them to be informed about what happens and to see the testimonies from there. So they prepared somehow the third wave, the after 1989 wave of migration in France, which unfortunately was not filled with intellectuals as they expected, but with another categories of people. But in the same time, their role was important, and they created somehow bridges between cultures and spiritualities. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't overpass the time.
Julio, thank you very much for this presentation in the historical key study. Very interesting, I think, for most of the participants here. And now the last in our workshop is Professor Lacker. I have seen he has arrived and so on. I want to invite you to yes, now we can see you.
Here.
Okay, to invite you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Despite the title of my presentation is in Italian, I will do the contribution in English. So I decided to title my presentation "Dignity and Justice for Migrants" because my area of specialization is social ethics and especially dignity of human being. And when I started to think about this presentation, I was taken by some like autobiographical facts because of course most of my relatives were migrants, and I in some way I'm same migrant because of course I'm from Italy and I work now in Czech Republic, even though of course it's a different kind of migration, but it helped me to understand the link between a foreigner and or newcomer and the country that is going to have you as a newcomer, especially in this space of Europe. So I would like to start from by reading one passage from a radio message read by Pope Pius XII, the 1st of June 1951, in which he switches the attention of the world from a world that should be dominated by men to a world that should be full of a land full of possibility. He says basically that our planet is well suited to be cultivated by man to satisfy his needs and civil activities. And more than once, it is inevitable that some families migrating from one spot to another should go elsewhere in search of a new homeland. So from this point of view, the Pope invites to read the possibility given by migration as a positive possibility. So something that is forced from some need, but that in the end should be a good stuff from the part of the migrant and from the part of the land that is accepting the migrant. Of course, he says that the nations which give and those which receive will both contribute to the increased welfare of man and the progress of human culture. So in the same discussion of the Pope, we have the basic idea that the dignity of human being, also in the case of migration, is completely preserved. And this is clear more decades later in the social doctrine of the Church, in the compendium written in 2004, and in the paragraph 2097 and 2098, we should read the complete understanding of this message. Because of course, the social doctrine, as you can read in this quotation, says that immigration can be a resource for development rather than an obstacle to it. In fact, someone could read migration as the lack of good behaviors or good disposal to the realization of human dignity. But we remember that the Saint Thomas Aquinas in Summa Theologiae invites to read people people that migrates as people that could enrich the country in which they are going. Of course, the same compendium says that the people that are migrating come from another less privileged areas of the earth, but the arrival in developed countries is often perceived as a threat to the high levels of well-being achieved thanks to decades of economic growth. But the same compendium in the next paragraph says that the problem of immigration could be easily regulated following the basic principles and values of the same social ethics. That, according to a definition of James Combo in the book Searching for God, is the defense of what is right, just, and noble in our life. So when we are going to face the problem of migration, we are basically facing a problem of recognition of human dignity of all the people that are migrating and the people that are accepting the migrant. And in a context of the one of the European Union, in which of course many people are entered in a secularized society, the role of the church in this case should be really important, and the fact of reuniting families should be respected and promoted. From this point of view, I find a direct link and a good connection to a letter written by Pius XII in 1952, that is Exsul Familia. The complete name is Exsul Familia Nazaretana, and we could immediately find the basic or the implicit reason that led the Pope to write this letter. He says that the basis of the new concept of migration is rooted in the discovery of the New World, in which the Christ priests were the tireless companions of the men who founded colonies in those far distant lands. And these priests also wished to move forward suitably and readily as missionaries to teach the gospel to the natives, who previously were entirely ignorant of the divine light. And they zealously proclaimed that the natives were to be treated as brothers by the colonists. We can read a good sermon to the natives written by Antonio de Montesinos for Christmas 1512, in which he says that he is very tired of Spanish people that think, or that are led to think by the colonization, that the natives are not to be respected because they are not Christian. So also this concept of migration as a possibility of encounter and possibility to increase the human dignity of all the people is rooted by the same Pope in this discovery of the New World, and of course by the application of some teachings coming from theologians of Middle Age. The same Pope, in the same title 1 of Exsul Familia, says that this process should be appreciated also in the 19th century migration, when many people left Europe and moved especially from Italy to America. And we know, of course, many history of Italians that encountered many problems also from the point of view of their dignity in coming to the new countries. And of course, the Pope says that, as usual, the Catholic Church devoted special effort and care to the spiritual welfare of these emigrants. So again, the role of the Church in creating this space of encounter and preservation of human dignity is full of meaning, is full of many possibilities of understanding. In fact, the same Church was or is ever careful to warn of the dangers that threaten society, morality, and religion. Now, I would like to point your attention to a new interpretation of this letter, implicit or explicit. In this case, is not important from a theoretical point of view. That is the new interpretation of Christian social ethics given by the Pope Francesco in his newest encyclic Fratelli Tutti. That it doesn't seem to be an encyclic devoted to migration, but we could read in some of the lines many hints to understand the actual or contemporary conception of the Church about migration. Of course, the Pope introduces the problem of human dignity and, of course, the dignity in the social ethic discussion by saying that human fraternity and social friendship should be defended because there are no diplomatic gestures but a reflection born of dialogue and common commitment. So the Church, again, in contemporary time, should take care of migrants. I read many articles from this point of view that talks about taking care of migrants. So the spiritual assessment or the coping of the migrations or of the migrants should be taken in a particular consideration. And of course, this comes from the recognition of the fact, the Pope says in the paragraph 22 of the encyclics, that the human rights are not equal for all. Of course, we are appreciating also in these days with the migration from Maghreb to Ceuta, that human rights are not always well preserved. And so, the Pope says that when the dignity of the human person is respected, I don't continue the quotation, I simply conclude by saying that human justice is preserved. So principles and values of social ethics are again helpful to understand how to preserve also dignity and justice of the migrants. The same Pope says in the paragraph 41 that the Church wants to go against the hesitant and fearful perspective regarding to the migrants. In fact, we must strive to create a great space to understand and to make some sort of spiritual assessment of the migrants. And the same desire of the Pope is the defense of the single human family. We always read Rerum Novarum by saying that the Church should be take care of the signs of the time. And in our times, in which, of course, we face many divisions inside at the same country, and we have seen also here in Czech Republic, but also in Italy, that the problem with the COVID-19 strengthened this division between the single human family. The Church should strive to affirm again this singleness, this uniqueness, this main core that constitute the human family. And the same Pope says that migrants are not seen as entitled like others to participate in the life of society. And it is forgotten that they possess the same intrinsic dignity as any person. But if we get back again the dignity of the people that face a strong process of migration, we are open to give them the possibility of salvation, in the sense that they can realize their life in the highest or the fullest possible way. And so, the hope or the theoretical issues got by social ethics should be really put into practice. And how is possible to realize the ideal of these restituting human dignity to all the people? And the example within which I conclude my presentation is the introduction of Exsul Familia, in which the Pope says that Emigre Holy Family of Nazareth fleeing into Egypt is the archetype of every refugee family. If we understand the life of the family of Nazareth, we know that the problem of migration, or the question of migration, is not a problem from the point of view of dignity and justice, because a good behavior or a good spiritual assessment to the migrants should help to cope them, to increase their dignity, and to give them the possibility to be an active part of the society. And so from this point of view, we can reach an authentic and integral development of the whole world, as the Pope said, with a single human family, or as a single human family. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope to have been clear, and of course I'm open to your question, remarks, or objections.
Thank you very much, Professor Lacca, for this presentation. So we have 4 very interesting presentations in a philosophical and theological point of view. Thomas Aquinas and Ricoeur, the human rights system about migrant workers. We have heard about the key studies, Romanian immigrants from France, and now the church social teaching about the space of encounter. Now there's only a very few possibility to share or to ask something. So on 1 or 2 questions we can have. Who wants to give a short reaction or have a question? Okay, I see at the moment perhaps all they are a little bit tired after a long time, but it's not a problem, because now in 4 minutes we will go further with a conclusion of our conference and the end. Perhaps for me it's very interesting to look for thinking together the different aspects we are dealing in theology, philosophy, social ethic, social teaching of church, and in a question of law and rights and human rights, all together with the same topic of the question how a good life, welfare for migrant, especially migrant workers in Europe, but also outside of Europe, are possible. And it's not so easy, I think, to integrate the different perspectives. The perspective of law and the perspective of philosophy, the perspective of theology, of social teaching, and so on. But perhaps one word we have heard, the exchange the exchange between people, between persons, the space of a encounter. I think this is one of this connection between. And perhaps another one is a word of gratitude. To have a gratitude to to others. Perhaps these are the links between the different perspectives we have. So on, I'm seeing that the other group, the section 2, the workshop group, is back. I see the moderator, Father Thomas from Berlin. So on, I think we can have the last 2 minutes to finish our working group, and now we are looking for the conclusion and the end of our Congress. Thank you very much to all participants. Very good.
Yes, I think the people of the other group, they are still on migration, but step by step they will be here, I hope.
At the moment, we are waiting for Professor Innocent. Now,
I think my personal experience from this morning, from all these testimonials, what I heard is that we need not to be isolated. We need not to be only in the same group with our culture, but we need every time this exchange for understand and for go forwards together. That is what I learned this morning. Okay, what do you mean, Thomas, about this very very intensive morning what we have?
Well, it was very exciting for me because it was this very international ambience, and I just returned from the second workshop with some testimonials, and we spoke a lot about countries like Romania, but also for me it was very interesting to see how it works in United Kingdom. For example, if you are what I learned, if you want to work there, they have such a thing like a credit system in the university. You need to collect credits. If you can speak English, you have 10 credits. If you have to apply to work, you have 70 credits, and so they say points for this. And I think it's a very it's perhaps a good possibility, but it looks a little bit strange that you are credited if you are able to join the United Kingdom or not. And then we had also some practical experiences, some associations in Italy, not only San Egidio, but also something in Palermo and in other regions who are really working for migrants. And this is a lot of some associations are Catholic or ecclesiastical, but not all, and they do a lot. And what I also see this big problem between migration and the beginning of nationalism against migrants. I think in all the countries, we had the example of Greece, but you can also speak about Germany, perhaps about Italy as well. If migrants are coming, nationalism raises. And this is a very strong connection, a very problematic connection as far as I think. Yeah, that's some of my impressions.
Thank you. This was also very, very nice what you say. That I give a word to Pater Ulrich now. What you think, Pater Ulrich, about this morning?
Yeah, thank you very much, Innocent. In our working group with the 4 testimonials, we have had very different perspectives. We have looked for the theme of the migration and worker migration in Europe and so on. And for me, it was very interesting to see there are philosophical concepts, there are concepts from today philosophy, but also from Middle Age, St. Thomas. They are human rights systems we have looked for. We have looked for in the key study about Romanian immigration from France and in communistic period, and we have looked for the Catholic social teaching, and all the different perspectives, they come together. This is my impression. They come together in the idea of exchanging between persons, or to offer space for encounter. And I think as a theologian, as a systematic theologian, this is one of the main tasks, not only of church, but also of Christian or people. They are living in the spirit of Jesus Christ to open such spaces. Thanks.
Thank you also very much, Father Ulrich, for this testimonial, very important. I ask also Augustine for your experience, because you was very, very busy this morning, but I think that everything is gone very good.
Thank you. I think you can hear me. Okay. So what gives me today is the emphasis that we have made on the fact of human dignity. Migration, those who are migrating are human beings, and we want them to walk also just like human beings and not like machines or animals. Even machines and animals are also taken care of. If we can take care of our machines and our animals for work, how much more human beings? And so that is very good point that was stressed. We call on the government, we call on the church authorities, that in whatever we are doing to help the migrants feel at home, we do that because they are human beings, and from my own presentation too, God wills and intends it to be so. So I think that is a good point that I want to take home from the workshop today. Thank you.
So I need to...
Okay, we are back with our... so, okay, everybody, they like to have this slides presentations can write me to my email, because we have a platform, a classroom for this project. In this platform, I have all abstracts, I have all slides, also for our traductors, and also all just finished presentation too. Not everybody finished now, but you know everywhere that we need the presentation till 10 or maximum 11 June, because the document goes to the independent censors. They made opinion about academic level of this document. If we need to change something, we need also this time, because this project crisis from our vice rector Helen Alford finished in July. It started in October and finished in July this year. And after this time, we were waiting for a publication in Angelicum Press. My intention was the publication in the journal of Angelicum, but it seems to be very, very complicated with all this team that work there in journal Angelicum. Not a problem. We make all this possible. I will ask also our Marco Salvati opinion about. Caro Marco, che cosa tu pensi della questa? Perché tu sei stato dal primo momento.
Sì, sono stato contento di essere presente a questa ultima parte del vostro lavoro, che ha avuto molti momenti di impegno, come io ho potuto seguire soltanto dall'esterno. E questa mattina ho avuto il piacere di accompagnare come coordinatore uno dei momenti E volevo partire da quello che ha detto il padre Augustin, che ha messo in luce la dignità umana come perno, come fondamento di una nuova visione dell'uomo, così come poi Papa Giovanni Paolo II ha nella sua antropologia messo in risalto. E poi durante appunto gli interventi della parte che io ho coordinato abbiamo visto alcune esperienze concrete riguardanti il fenomeno della migrazione, meglio dei migranti dalla ex Jugoslavia, dai Balcani, oppure nella Boemia del Sud. Ecco, tutto questo costituisce una esperienza che insieme ai principi della dignità dell'uomo e una visione dell'uomo di stampo cristiano possono poi far nascere e crescere una cultura dell'incontro, così come abbiamo ascoltato nella prima riflessione che era proposta durante la sezione che io ho coordinato, una cultura dell'incontro che metta al centro la persona, che costruisca l'incontro, che faccia della fede un motivo di un impegno a realizzare la fraternità, fratelli tutti, da dovunque si venga, dovunque si vada. Quindi grazie a tutti quelli che hanno proposto la loro riflessione e soprattutto direi grazie a quelli che hanno costruito questo evento in maniera così interessante, sia coloro che lo hanno ideato e strutturato, sia coloro che sono intervenuti. E grazie di avermi invitato a partecipare.
So we have, I just posted in our chat, thank you very much, Father Marco. I just posted in our chat also our communique, what we like to present it. This communique is created by all our team, presented to European institution, but also church institution in Europe, also the European Labour Agency, and all this important institution. Because, for example, we have also feedback from the Commissar of the European Union for the Human Rights, and we like to continue with this dialogue to show that also in this platform and this academical platform is possible to search a solution for this sometimes very slavery conditions or living here in Europe. Okay, I would like to say thank you also to our traductors, Ilaria and Mariela. They started at 10:30 with us. I am very happy that this was also a collaboration with our traductors. But last but not least, also for our technical support, especially Father Giuseppe Vin and Olena Komisarenko, because their two was indispensable. You know, in February is coming this decision, but that we cannot open our university for a present meeting, so we make it, for me, first time in online, and also first time in parallel sections, because not everybody have after 2 hours afternoon the time to continue. The project was two days on our university, but it was not possible. I hope that we can continue also next year, or for example, because we have a new project is still in this way. So, and the last of our activities is the video of our Rector Magnificus of the university, and please, Giuseppe, send this message also for our.
Dear participants of the conference, Lavoratori Migranti Invisibili e Diritti Umani Visibili. It is with great joy that I received the proposal of this project that became an important part of the crisis program for the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas here in Rome. Your common efforts focus on the problems that should be at the center of our attention if we want to accomplish our Christian responsibilities in contemporary society. We need the courage to offer prophetic criticism, and we need to believe firmly that we still may and should be agents of change in the world. The direction of the changes we want to inspire as Christians is obvious. We want to take a step with a world which is more similar to the kingdom of God preached by Jesus in the gospel. Such a step will not be possible if we do not care about all those who have no names and no faces in our society. Actually, it is quite striking that the gospel puts at its center a number of heroes without names or faces. According to the Gospels, Jesus spoke of only one person who offered her whole life. Holon ton bion, panta ton bion. He could have made a similar statement when speaking about himself. Interestingly, he never described this about any of the apostles or prophets of the Old Testament, nor about any of the important figures in public life at the time. Rather, he spoke of a woman whose name is not recorded in the Gospels. She entered into salvation history as the poor widow. In a similar way, in John's Gospel, it is not a disciple or public figure who learns from Jesus that he is the Messiah expected by Israel. This crucial truth is revealed to another woman who enters the Christian narrative as the Samaritan woman at the well. Then we cannot forget the first saint, the only one canonized by Jesus himself, the unnamed criminal who accompanied Jesus on the cross, the so-called good thief. We could go on with other examples. These unnamed, seemingly invisible people do not seem to impact our world. They are in many cases forgotten in our hearts, in our thinking, in our wallets. And yet, only with these people can we really understand the gospel and the relevance of Jesus' message for our contemporary world. I would like to thank each of you for tackling this important subject. I would like to express my gratitude to Sister Helen Alford, our Vice Rector and the Director of the Crisis Program. I wish to extend tremendous gratitude to Father Innocent Maria Sanislo, who together with Father Thomas Eggensberger and our friends from the Marie-Dominique Chenu Institute in Berlin have invested significant time and energy to organize and advertise this conference. Finally, special thanks goes to all of you who have prepared papers and are participating remotely. God bless you all, have a good day, and all the best for your future endeavors. Thank you for your attention.
Message also for our